It's the apocalypse.
No.
I know, right? Jeez. Oh man. So
It's
wait,
like,
so
and
you
it's
have
not just that it's not just that it's like a whole bunch of teams, but it's a whole bunch of the good teams. Like Dak is out, Josh Allen's out, Justin Herbert's out. Like it's nuts.
it
Like
is
you're
nuts.
not only losing players, but you're losing quality players.
It's bad. It's bad. And like I'm sitting there and I just started writing for Trophy Smack. I've been doing all the editing and stuff lately, and we're actually creating like a whole new brand over there. We can actually talk shit and not have to be necessarily like correct by fantasy football standards. So it's been fun like getting this all up and running, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna launch my article this week because last week we were slammed. The week before that, I wanted to make sure everything was right. So I'm gonna launch it this week. And then I'm sitting down and writing, and I'm like, I would pick the Apocalypse to start my waiver wire article. Like there is going to be nobody
No.
out there.
No, and then the injuries on top of it. Like it's just pickings are slim.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And of course we have the injury to Latavius Murray, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Antonio Gibson. I don't even know what's happening with that one. But yeah, I was like, oh, perfect week. Good job, Chase. Good job. All right. You
Her
ready?
timing was impeccable.
Exactly. Side note before we get the show started, can I just get a win in Weenus, please? Like I can't buy a win in that league. I'm really bad at being bad. Again, it's like
No.
I don't even know how many losses it is at this point. All right, let's go.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into another episode of Fantasy Intervention. We have the waiver wires. Because guess what? The apocalypse is upon us. As we talked about right before we got the show started, I could not do this alone. The apocalypse is way too tough to handle by myself. So I had to bring in the one, the only, at Bryn_Flynn on Twitter. What's going on, Bryn? How you doing tonight?
I'm excellent. Just trying to navigate the bipocalypse myself.
Oh, man, it is rough. We have 6 teams on waivers this week. It's the most, on bye this week. It is the most teams on bye in any other week. I think the max other than that would be 4. And like you said, Britt, it's not just like normal teams that you'd see, on bye weeks. Like it's not like the Browns or like Washington. Like we're talking about some of the best teams at quarterback position, some of the best teams at tight end, and some of the best teams at wide receivers. So when you sit there and you take that combination, right, of some of the best offensive teams at those positions, and then you take the running back situation that we've had so far in 2021, where we have injuries galore. I mean, this is tough. This is going to be a tough week to navigate these buys. And yeah, I couldn't pick a better person to do it with. So are you ready to do this?
I am. Let's jump in.
All right. Before we do jump in, I want to let everybody know if you are over there on Twitter watching, I don't really know what's happening with the comments. So head over to youtube.com/fantasy intervention. Once again, that's youtube.com/fantasy intervention. Make sure you hit subscribe while you're there. It goes a very long way. And of course, you can line up your questions in the chat. If you're on Facebook, of course, you guys already know. You guys know the deal. Line up those questions in the chat. Ask if somebody's droppable. Ask if you should pick a certain player up. Give us your questions outside of who should I play for this upcoming week, because that is tomorrow night. So let's go ahead and get this ball rolling. And let's talk about just some of the no shit type players that we have that are available on rosters, and you're seeing everybody put down, oh, you should pick up this guy, you should pick up that guy, you should pick up this guy. And I think the most obvious one starts at the quarterback position, and that's Jameis Winston. 21 points or 27.1% rostered up against the Seahawks. I mean, you can't feel any more comfortable than this scenario, right? You're going to see targets to Alvin Kamara. You're going to see some deep attempts to Marquez Callaway. Like, there is going to be opportunity for Jameis Winston to score this game. And, you know, he hasn't been half bad so far this season. So at this point, how do you feel about Jameis Winston? Is he a no-shit pick up and play for single quarterback leagues this week?
I think so. I'm actually looking to pick him up in one of my home leagues just because the quarterback position is so dismal this week with the buys and all the injuries. The Seahawks are kind of mid-range against the quarterback, and I know that the New Orleans offense doesn't pass that much, but I mean, up against Tampa next week, Atlanta week 9, Tennessee week 10. I mean, he's got some fantasy viability going forward for the next few weeks to try to help you get through some of these buys. And Michael Thomas should probably be back week 8 or 9, so that'll give him another weapon.
That shouldn't, like we talked about, he hasn't been bad. So once they're able to spread out this offense, I think Alvin Kamara's value actually goes up. Sure, he might see a few less touches, but I mean, you can't really expect anything less in the passing game than what he's received for the most part. So I'm looking forward to a boost in the Alvin Kamara stuff, but Jameis Winston should definitely be helped. And yeah, like you said, the schedule, everything is just lining up for Jameis Winston to go off. Let's talk about another young quarterback over there who has question marks around his future in Tua Tagovailoa. He's, he didn't look bad necessarily last week, question mark. I mean, he was borderline, right? But it's got to be better than Jacoby Brissett. Either way, is he somebody that you think is startable from here on out, or is he somebody that you're at least willing to stream for this upcoming week?
I don't know if I'd start it from here on out. I would have to watch and kind of see how it evolves. But this week, he's facing the Falcons, and they allow the fourth most rushing points per game to quarterbacks. And Tua does have that rushing upside. Last week, he rushed for 22 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, put up 329 more in the air. And he did this without Will Fuller, Devonta Parker, Preston Williams. You know, he's doing it. He's doing the thing. And his connection with Waddle is building as we go further on in the season. So I definitely think there's some viability there.
Dude, his connection with Waddle is just kind of curious. Like, I don't even know what's happening. Some weeks he ends up seeing, 13 targets. Other weeks he sees like 2 targets. But at least we know that Waddle's going to be good on the first drive. After that, it's a giant question mark. Most likely, probably not over the other one. All right, we have J.D. McKissick. I mean, with the whole deal with Gibson and his injury going on with his shins and with his calves, I mean, I don't really find this a question. Do we need to review this at all? Is there anything you want to bring up as to maybe why Gibson wouldn't want to be a no-shit, pickup for this week? Or are you pretty much going all in on Gibson? I mean, on J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, I don't see why he's not rostered as a handcuff anyway. There was uncertainty even going into the season with questions surrounding Gibson's turf toe injury that had kind of hampered him at the end of last year. We didn't know how that was going to go. So I'm pretty surprised that he's even out there. Also in PPR formats, McKissick's half of his touches last week were catches. So in a PPR format, he's extremely valuable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I think he's a no-shit pickup. As for Ramondre Stevenson, he's somebody that was a little bit of a shocker last week. He's been slowly working his way into the offense. Obviously, Damian Harris has been dealing with some injuries. And honestly, I'm not a Ramondre Stevenson guy. I was not prior to the season starting. He's looked good. He's looked really good. So I know that you actually put him in this section over here. Why did you actually throw him in this section?
I think with just specifically with week 7 and all the buys and all the injuries, Stevenson provides a ton of upside because the Patriots are playing the Jets this week. I mean, they should get a lead. They should run it down their throats. He has been pretty efficient on his carries that he's got. One concern is that he's only played 33% of the snaps last week, so he's not getting a ton of work. But the way that they're rotating him in and out with Damian Harris makes me think that his value is going to go up as the weeks progress.
Yeah, I'm on board with that 100%. As for Marquez Callaway, we talked about Jameis Winston. Obviously, with the schedule coming up, it's an advantageous schedule. He's a no-shit pickup for me as well. So let's go ahead and let's hop into these quarterback situations. Let's hop into actually the void scenario, right? Because you see people just throwing out player after player after player. They need to fill space, right? These companies, they need to fill gaps. They need to sit there and figure out exactly, who they're going to throw in there to make sure they meet their character minimum, or at least their word minimum, right? So they come up with these random players, and they literally will throw shit up against the wall to see if it sticks. I mean, the first one that comes to mind for me is, right off the bat is Taylor Heinicke, right? Because he's not a good quarterback. And sitting there and looking at it, everybody's like, oh, he's playing Green Bay. Yeah, guess what? He just played the Chiefs last week, who were 31st up against the quarterback. The only team worse than them was, of course, his own team. So, I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm like, why in the world would they sit there and tell you to go pick up Heinicke after he's had up and down weeks to the point where he could end up losing you a week? He's never going to end up winning you a week. He can keep you from losing a week, but he's lost more weeks for you than he's gone out and won weeks for you. So, I mean, with that being said, like, are people nuts to go after Heinicke, or am I alone here?
Oh, yeah. I've been personally victimized by Heinicke because I started him last week against the Chiefs because on paper, the matchup was just so primo. Like, he couldn't take advantage of it. I don't see any reason going forward, like how you think he's going to do better than he did last week against a better defense. It doesn't make any sense. And then they play the Bucks in Washington, and then they play the Panthers in Carolina. So they don't exactly have a great schedule going forward. And Fitzpatrick may come back from IR soon too. So his time might just be up anyway.
Yeah, they're expecting Fitzpatrick back by week 10. So that's a big one. I mean, this is something where they have the bye week 9. So if Heinicke can at least suffice, a decent level over the next 2 weeks, it should give Ryan Fitzpatrick enough time to recover. Week 10 should be the week that's targeted for Ryan Fitzpatrick, which, I mean, also, once again, just makes Heinicke even more ridiculous to go after waivers on. Like, it throws me off. I can't get behind it. I don't support it. Heinicke is not the answer. As for another quarterback that you actually threw on here, I want you to go ahead and take this one over because I kind of wanted to hear what you had to say about it.
So Carson Wentz has kind of been, well, what do you call it? Fool's gold, right? Because in the past 3 weeks, he's put up over 20 points. But when you look at who he played Miami, Baltimore, and then Houston. The Colts actually don't pass the ball that much. They're about midway in the league in pass attempts per game. And this week, the Colts face a 49ers defense that's already racked up 11 sacks this season, and they had a bye last week. So they've done these 11 sacks in 5 games. There's also a little bit of question on the Colts offensive line. Quentin Nelson is on IR, and their starting offensive tackle, Braden Smith, is questionable for Sunday's matchup. So the San Francisco 49ers are going to be putting a lot of pressure on him, and I don't think he's going to return any points. There are better quarterbacks out there to stream to get you through your buys this week.
Sorry about that. He struggles up against the blitz. He struggles up against pressure. And, we already know that there are points that he deals with injuries and whatnot. So Carson Wentz for me is an absolute no-go when it comes to that after you actually break it down. It's something to where I was curious and actually had to go look it up myself to be like, wait, do I have an argument for this? No, I don't. I can get on board with you 100%. As for the running backs, let's go ahead and up a couple. I've been writing for Trophy Smack like I brought up. In Trophy Smack, I've been writing this waiver wire piece where it's waiver wire players to trash. Because I just don't agree with a lot of these sites throwing out 40 players and just seeing what sticks. It just makes no sense to me. There's one website, I checked it today. They had 50 waiver wire players to pick up. 50.
Just pick up everybody on waivers. That's fine.
Is that clickbait or what? Is that complete bullshit that you are putting 50? You're telling people that there are 50 players you can pick up with the waivers right now. That is insane. That is stupidity. That is not something that you actually want to gravitate towards. So I wrote about it, right? And Le'Veon Bell was like the glaring standout, right? Because they actually are sitting there in a shared backfield, right? They're in a committee first off. That's like the number one red flag. And sure, Latavius Murray got hurt, but you also have Tyson Williams coming back. So, I mean, that's a gigantic red flag for me right out the gates. But then we sit there and we look at where Le'Veon Bell has had his production in terms of, fantasy value over his career. And when it comes to fantasy points, he's had over 46% of his fantasy points come in the receiving game. The Ravens don't pass. The Ravens don't pass the running back. So what's the value? What's the point of getting a pass-catching running back in an offense that does not utilize that? It's absolutely absurd to me. So for somebody to be ignorant enough to put Le'Veon Bell on a waiver wire pickup in a backfield in an offense that does not use pass-catching backs is insane to me. Like, it's crazy. It's psychotic. It is clickbait at that point. Are you on board with Le'Veon Bell, or am I just standing here in the rain holding up a boom box, just hoping for somebody to join me?
No, if it was 2015 or whatever, I would totally be in. But it is 2021, in fact. And Le'Veon Bell, he just doesn't have it anymore. He also just got promoted to the 53-man roster today. Like, yeah, he's been called up to play in these games. But if he has spent, a month on the practice squad and it took him that long to even get signed to the roster, that tells me that the coaching staff doesn't really have a lot of faith in him either. So, they're just kind of filling in, putting duct tape on the Titanic.
Yeah, it's absurd to me. It just doesn't make any sense. But I mean, if we talk about another crowded backfield, another waiver wire target for this week, this is another crazy one. It's Kenyan Drake. I mean, I understand that he had a great week, right? He had an insane week. He ended up giving you, 2 touchdowns, 73 yards. And he did that on a total of 6 touches. That's insane. Until you look and you see that he had 11 snaps in this game. That's not really too far off from his normal workload. He ended up, if you go back and you watch the film, right, he burned this guy who runs a 4.79 40, who was undrafted in 2015, who literally almost has no game log footage. Like, I had to go all the way into Pro Football Focus and try and find where I could find some valuable information. And what I found is that he's gotten burned on over 4 or 5 passes this year for 25 yards out or more, typically up against the running back. So we're sitting there and we're looking at a player. I don't even remember his name. His name is AJ something. AJ Johnson, I think.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. AJ Johnson, I believe his name is. He's the middle linebacker over there for the Broncos. Of course, Kenyan Drake is going to have a one-up on this dude. But when you look at Kenyan Drake as a whole, I don't want to rely on a running back that is giving 11 touches. And until he sees more, then I don't want to play him. Is he going to start seeing more over Josh Jacobs? No, because Peyton Barber saw more touches. Now, you could say he's out of the doghouse, but he's really not. He's still seeing about the same amount of snaps that he saw over the previous 2 weeks, maybe slightly more. But 11 snaps, not 11 touches, 11 snaps is not enough for me to go out and waste FAAB on a waiver wire. It makes no sense to me. There is no upside play at this point. He got lucky on a couple plays. His other touchdown was a 20-yard run where it looked like the offensive line parted the Red Sea. He got touched by the defensive tackle on the shoulder. The defensive tackle got his arm on his shoulder, and that was the only player that touched him. That's not going to happen typically. That's not going to be a thing. And if it does happen, it's going to happen for Josh Jacobs, not for Kenyan Drake. I'm out on Kenyan Drake. Do not waste your FAAB on him unless Britt disagrees.
No, I actually was going to write pretty much the same thing. He saw 11 snaps. The only person or player that I'll rely on that snap count is Nick Chubb, just because he's so hyper efficient. So Nick Chubb can't go in and produce with that snap count, but not Kenyan Drake.
No, it's absurd. Absolutely absurd. All right. Let's hop on a wide receiver. Real quick, we do have a question in the chat. Sorry I didn't get to it earlier. I kind of forgot it was there. All right. We have, is Sermon or Gainwell stoppable or droppable? I think you meant to say. 14-team PPR. No, Gainwell is not droppable in my opinion. Sermon is a little bit more of a toss-up, especially since you have Jermichael Hasty and Jeff Wilson coming back. Kenny Gainwell, however, kind of got the short end of the stick this past week. I believe he only had 12 snaps, which is not normally what he sees. They should have taken more advantage of it. And if you guys actually go back and you watch the film, there was one play, I believe it was in the second quarter. I highlighted it's on my Twitter page somewhere. If you guys go to my Twitter and you scroll down a little bit, I just posted it yesterday, I believe. There was one play where Kenny Gainwell actually had the middle linebacker beat on the outside. He had 2 steps on the guy, and literally it was a perfect opportunity for a post route throw by Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts took way too long, didn't throw it, and then Kenny Gainwell actually pulled up because he's like, oh, I guess he's not going to throw it to me since I'm wide open now. He ended up pulling up by 1 step. Hurts ends up throwing on the ball. He ends up taking a few more steps. The linebacker grabs onto his shoulder to keep him back. It should have been a pass interference. He ended up not getting there and ended up blowing a touchdown. Jalen Hurts is brutal, but Kenny Gainwell is a very, very good player, and I'm not willing to drop extremely good players because of their situations, because their situation can always change, especially with how much Jalen Hurts runs the ball. when it comes to Sermon, are you dropping Sermon, Britt, or are you holding on to him?
Yeah, I actually have dropped Sermon in a couple of leagues just because I don't think that he's going to get the workload if he hasn't gotten it already. It's clear that Shanahan just absolutely does not like him for whatever reason. And like you said, with JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Wilson coming back, kind of hammering the whole crowded backfield thing home, it's who knows who's going to get those touches.
And how are you feeling about Kenny Gainwell?
I like Gainwell. I think that Nick Sirianni needs to figure out how to use him. I was extremely disappointed that they didn't try to pass him the ball against Tampa Bay when Tampa Bay is like one of the worst against pass catching running backs. But I think they'll figure it out. Just be patient on him. He does have a ton of upside.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's hop on to these wide receivers real quick. And there's a reason why I'm moving him to the wide receivers, and it's because he is a wide receiver. All right, this is getting absolutely ridiculous, these takes on Demetric Felton, right? Demetric Felton played 1 year in a COVID season. It was 6 games that he played running back, and he still mixed up at the wide receiver position to that point. He just got a lot more handoffs in that situation. I mean, we talk about Antonio Gibson, right? Demetric Felton is like 5'9", 5'10", like 180, 190 pounds, right? Antonio Gibson is 230. 6 foot 230. He is a brick wall of a man, and yet he still was not able to get third down snaps over with Washington football because he didn't know how to pick up blitzes. Because guess what? He's a wide receiver for the majority of college. Sure, he was labeled as a running back for part of it, but he was a wide receiver for the majority of college. So he has to come and he has to learn the schemes. He has to learn how to pass block. He has to learn how to release. And then he finally saw a few opportunities so far this year while playing a little bit hurt. Demetric Felton played 6 games, like I just brought up. He's way smaller. He's not equipped to actually handle that. And unless they're going to allow Baker Mayfield with a bad shoulder to pretty much go unblocked because their offensive line has been meh so far this season when it comes to pass blocking, I mean, we're talking about a situation where if they allow Demetric Felton into the game, we could see Baker Mayfield leaving on a stretcher. We could see Case Keenum coming into the game and taking over very, very early on in the stages. So Demetric Felton is a wide receiver, and I'm not buying the fact that they're going to move him into the backfield just because of injuries. If anything, they're going to end up using other running backs in pass blocking situations, and Dearness Johnson should have a major workload. I think they're going to get very, very creative. I think they could see a few zero backfield type sets and use the tight ends for blocking additions instead of using the running backs. I think Demetric Felton could have value as a wide receiver, but don't tell me that he's going to be a running back. Like, he's not going to come in and play the running back position. That's just not where I'm sitting. He's played 2 snaps so far as a running back this year. 2. Am I just going off the handle on nothing, or should we be considering Demetric Felton a running back?
He's not a running back. I just really don't get this dual eligibility thing because he's not being used. His snap share also worries me because he only saw 20% of the snaps last week, and that was Chubb out and with Hunt leaving early, and he still only got 20% of the snaps. I'm like, yeah, of course, this week he's going to get the volume, but if he's not a good enough running back, like, it is going to be a Dearness Johnson day, and he's going to be in there for like a third down relief situation if he runs at all. So I'm not buying into him.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. I'm not on board with it. It just, like, I'm out. All right. So let's talk about another gadget guy, because that's what I consider Demetric Felton to be. And that's going to be Jamal Agnew, who punt returner, like, he's a Swiss utility knife, right? Like, but he's not somebody with size. He's not somebody that you can rely on from week to week. He's not that go-to guy. So I'm looking at Jamal Agnew and I'm like, sure, he's seen an uptick in fantasy points, a little bit of an uptick in snaps, obviously, since DJ Chark went out. But I don't trust the play calling. I don't trust how they're rolling out their wide receivers. I mean, some weeks you're seeing Tavon Austin. Other weeks you're seeing Jamal Agnew. Like, we don't know what to expect from this offense. And I don't want to go out and waste waiver wire pickup on a guy whose upside so far this year has been 12 points. Like, that's not something that I'm trying to waste my money on. And when you actually feel good playing it, let him go land on somebody else's roster. He can be a roster bomb somewhere else where he could end up having a week where he puts up 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. Why would you go put a waiver claim out on that? Why would you go spend FAAB on that? It just doesn't make any sense. Are you attracted to this gadget guy in particular, or are you off on this?
No, I'm he's great as far as a punt returner, kick returner situation, but his usage in the offense really worries me from a fantasy perspective. He only has a 33.8% route participation this season, which is number 99 at the position. And he only has a 28.3% snap share, which is 130 at the position. Like if volume is king, then this ain't it.
It ain't it. It ain't it. Yo.
It ain't it. The upcoming schedule, they've got, the bye, and then at Seattle versus Buffalo, Indianapolis versus San Fran. And it's not a terribly hard schedule aside from Buffalo. But I just don't trust him to produce at a consistent enough level to justify rostering him.
No, I agree with you 100% on that. It's another head scratcher over there. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Well, also, we just can't really trust Urban Meyer. We can't trust this offense. We just don't know. But another receiver who hasn't been consistent enough for me to roster this season is Nicole Hardman. Like, yeah, sure, he put up his 462, but he still didn't find the end zone on 5 targets. But after Hill and Kelsey, everyone else in this Chiefs offense is basically just a wide receiver, 3A, 3B, and 3C. Demarcus Robinson saw 6 targets last week, and Byron Pringle saw 3. So, I mean, they're basically getting the same amount of targets between the 3 of them. The Chiefs don't have a bad schedule coming up. They're at Tennessee versus the Giants, versus Green Bay, at Vegas, and then versus Dallas. So if you do need somebody to help get you through the bye week, there are probably worse options, but I'm not spending any FAAB for somebody who doesn't see that volume. What do you think?
Okay, this one's a little bit tough for me because I liked Nicole Hardman. I thought that he could end up being an asset, and they started to include him more in the offense. Then they give him the ball, and he fumbles inside the 20, I believe. So it's just like a bad situation right off the bat. He was killing it. He has a great reception, then he fumbles it. It's like, okay, like this sucks because he's so close to hitting that breakout point, but he's not there yet. He's not going to break out this year. That's not going to happen. Not unless something happens to Tyreek. Not going to win. But I think that might be corkboard. I'm not really sure. Anyways, so yes, Nicole Hardman is definitely a riskier pickup. But if I want to go throw out, a buck or two on him, see if I can get him if I have a bad wide receiver position, I would do that over a player like Alden Lazard, right? I would do that on a player I would do it over Agnew, right? So Nicole Hardman, for me, has a very, very small amount of value as a flyer in hopes that he could take off this week. And then, okay, we can see something. But honestly, I don't want to keep him rostered. So if you have, let's just say you have 80% of your FAAB still left because you're not somebody that likes to go out and just blow it unless there's an obvious pickup. Or maybe you missed on players this whole season. He's somebody that you can throw a couple bucks at where it's 2%, 4% of your FAAB. It's nothing. That. It doesn't matter because everybody else at this point is already 50% through their FAAB, or at least most people are. So he's somebody that I could throw a couple bucks at, and if he doesn't perform this week, just kick him to the curb. He's done at that point. He's dead to me. But he's so close to being a good player, not a breakout player, but he's so close to hitting that stage where his routes are getting better. He's doing more things with the ball in his hands after the catch, and he's not just a straight line, downfield type receiver like we've seen over the past few years. He's getting better every single year, and I think people are kind of neglecting to see that. Like I said, I'm still not going out there and spending a whole bunch. But if you want to throw a buck or two at it, I won't blame you if you're weak at the wide receiver position. If you have, if you're complete living hell over there. But am I going to drop somebody that I like for him? Hell no.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. And they worked him we're on gadget guys. They kind of did work him as a gadget guy until this year. And maybe if that usage improves, then he could boom. But I just don't see it happening with all those weapons in Kansas City. But as we look at one boomer bust type player, let's look at another one in Donovan Peoples-Jones. If you look at the stat line for last week, this is tempting. This is juicy. But when you watch the film, 57 yards and a touchdown of that output came from the miraculous Hail Mary from Baker, where he just lobbed it up into, 5 defenders. Jarvis Landry should be back soon too. And Cleveland just doesn't pass a lot. So I'm a little bit worried about the volume in that situation. What do you think about it?
Okay, so this is something that I tilted with big time because I wrote a whole piece about him. I literally wrote a whole piece and I read it and I'm like, okay, it's not as bad as it looks because they don't have any running backs, because, when we talk about the Broncos, we talk about the Steelers, we talk about the Bengals. I mean, these three teams, they all have a chance of going up on the Browns if the Browns don't have a running game. So essentially going to have to pass. But then you brought up a good point about Baker Mayfield's shoulder. I'm concerned about that. And I'm most concerned about the pace of play. So the Broncos, they don't run a whole lot of plays. The Steelers don't run a whole lot of plays. They're running the ball constantly. The Bengals, maybe, but by then we can end up seeing the running game back. It's something where he's had his opportunities, and I love DPJ, by the way. Donovan Peoples-Jones is one of my favorite receivers. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL one day. I think he's going to be a superstar. But picking him up for redraft leagues right now, I think is a bit premature. Once again, I'll still throw a couple bucks at him to see if I can get him on my roster just in case he does end up going off, because if he continues to go off, he could end up taking a job away from OBJ. Yes, I'm saying that right. Or from Jarvis Landry. Or they can end up moving to 3 wide receiver sets more often. Regardless, I don't want a boom or bust player that I'm going to spend a lot of FAAB on up against teams who don't really give you a ton of opportunity to do so because you have the Broncos and Steelers running such a slow pace of play. It's just something where it's like it'll leave a bad taste in your mouth. And like, are you actually going to feel comfortable starting him up against the Steelers if he doesn't do well up against the Broncos? You actually feel comfortable starting him up against the Broncos, although the Broncos have a great defense in this Thursday night matchup. Baker Mayfield has a bad shoulder. Like, when will you actually feel comfortable starting him? And I think that's a big question you have to ask yourself before you go spend FAAB on him. So although I wrote him in as a trash target for waiver wires, I went back a little bit because I'm like, oh, maybe he could end up seeing the targets. Maybe he could end up seeing the efficiency, and maybe he gets a fourth quarter touchdown. So I'm not going to scream at somebody if they end up spending FAAB on him. But am I going to do it? Fuck no. Nope, not going to be me. I'm not the one. All right. Talking about not being the one. I've got a tight end for you. I've got a tight end for you that I hate. I hate. He's not my guy. I don't think I touted him last week, did I? Did I tout him? I don't think so.
No.
Because I remember picking him up one league and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm going to literally puke in my mouth. Like, this is gross. If you pick up Evan Ingram, then you're glutton for punishment. Evan Ingram is trash. He will always be trash. He will always be competing for one of the most drops in the league for the tight end position. He is garbage. I mean, he's gotten I think the 12th most targeted tight end per game this season. In the 4 games he's played, he's given you no double-digit performances, and he's graded outside the top 50 according to PFF's receiving grades. Evan Ingram is trash. I don't care if there's no receivers on his team. I don't care if everybody's banged up. I don't care if literally he's rolling out with CFL players. They're still going to outproduce him because he can't catch the ball. He's not a good football player. And every year I just hear Evan Ingram's going to break out. Evan Ingram's going to break out. All of his receivers are hurt. When has Evan Ingram ever had a receiver outside of Odell Beckham? And guess what? His best weeks in his entire career came with Odell Beckham. It's an extremely frustrating thing to watch people go back to Odell Beckham because it's like going back to the ex-girlfriend that just keeps cheating on you, but she's into like weird stuff, so she actually does it in front of you, like, and she has you watch. Like, that's what it's like going back to Evan Ingram. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't want anything to do with it. Get Evan Ingram out of here. I can't do it.
Yeah, he's got bricks for hands. And if you just look at the basic usage, they're not using him in the red zone like nearly as much as they were in his rookie season or even his second year. And his efficiency's gone way down. I posted this from, I think it was Fantasy Pros, but
RotoWire.
RotoWire. Okay. So I've been on way too many sites today, obviously, but
oh yeah,
he had, so much research, too many leagues. Also, I picked him up in the Weenus League. If we want to talk about good at being bad, he is my Weenus tight end. So that should tell you something.
No.
Yeah. Well, his fumbles and his drops get me points in that league.
Did he rack them up for you?
He ended up with like 30 points a couple weeks ago for that fumble and the
He
drop.
is so bad.
But yeah, he's not getting used at all in the red zone. And Daniel Jones is still banged up. We don't know how that concussion is. Their offensive line is banged up. They really don't have a run game to speak of. There's only so many negatives that you can benefit from, and I think that it puts too much too much pressure on the offense as a whole for all these missing pieces that they have. So yeah, ain't touching him unless it's a weenus.
Oh God. Oh, first you bring up sites and now you're bringing up weenuses. All right. Moving on. Oh my God. Okay, I didn't see this last tight end that you put up. So let's go to your second to last tight end. Who do you have for your second to last tight end?
I've got Mo Alley Cox, and I know that yes, he's found the end zone the past couple weeks. I think 3 times in the past few weeks. But if you pick him up based on that stat line, then you're just point chasing. You're chasing touchdowns. You're chasing, the hope that one of his 5-4 targets go into the end zone. And that's just not the kind of production that I want out of one of my players. And he only played 50% of the snaps last week. So he's not exactly out on the field a ton. Yeah, he's gotten lucky with some busted coverages and things, but it's not something that I want to rely on, on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Mo Alley Cox is somebody that a lot of people are picking up because they are ended up in the red zone. But you brought up Carson Wentz's schedule earlier, right? Like his schedule is super advantageous. That's why they've had multiple opportunity after multiple opportunity. I mean, we just saw the Indianapolis Colts with one of the easiest 3-game schedules of any team in the entire season. So with that being said, Mo Alley Cox has seen red zone opportunities. I'm not on board with this, especially up against the San Francisco 49ers. They have good safety help. They have good linebackers who can cover the tight ends. Mo Alley Cox, I'm out on as well. I would fade that extremely hard this week. But this next person that you have, I'm not on board with. So let's go ahead and go over that person.
So it's OJ Howard. And last week he put up a stat line of 6 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. I just think that Gronk is going to come back sooner rather than later. And even when Gronk was out, Howard only played 65% of the snaps against Philadelphia. Philadelphia's got pretty poor tight end coverage, so they exploited that. I don't see it being a thing going forward. And this isn't to say anything bad against OJ Howard. I really, really like him. I just think that Gronk benefits more out of the system when he comes back than Howard does.
All right, here's the deal. OJ Howard's coming off a torn Achilles, right? Like he's coming off pretty much career-ending injury to an extent for a lot of different tight ends. He's a player that struggled throughout the majority of his career, but he's still a amazing prospect coming out of college. Did I lose you? Am I back?
Oh, you're back.
Oops, sorry. Anyway, so he still has to fill out his destiny, essentially. He has to still come to, fulfillment of what he's supposed to be. But this is one of the best prospects coming out. I love OJ Howard, man. And with the way that it operates, with the way this offense operates, it's just, who's going to get the opportunities based off matchups. We've seen Chris Godwin be exploited multiple different opportunities when he has advantageous matchups in the slot. We've seen Mike Evans exploited when he has advantageous matchups on the outside up against smaller corners. We've seen Antonio Brown with guys who struggle to cover deep balls. We've seen Rob Gronkowski whenever a small safety comes up. And OJ Howard is a mismatch nightmare. Like he's a guy who literally can overcome speed. He can overcome size. He can overcome getting down the field and dealing with guys who struggle on the double move. I mean, this is something where OJ Howard is just finally getting back into his groove. And yes, Gronk is going to be the starting tight end over there, but he should still get worked into 40 to 60% of the snaps. And his schedule coming up is pretty sexy overall. We're talking about the Bears. We're talking about the Saints. Those are both mediocre, but he can still end up overcoming those. Washington, who's terrible in coverage up against the tight end position. The Giants, meh at best. Colts, you can pick on the tight end all day. The Falcons after that. I mean, this is something where I'm going to be rolling out OJ Howard as the second tight end onto the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, regardless of if Gronk is healthy or not. And, we've seen Cameron Brate actually be, the starting tight end in this offense, but OJ Howard has seized that role for him. He's like, hey, give me the ball. This is my role. This is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be catching balls. I'm going to put up 6 catches, 49 yards and a touchdown. I'm going to be the dominant factor. Now, I understand the concern. I understand not wanting to roll him out. But when it comes to keeping him on your roster, or at least getting him on your roster for deeper leagues where you need 2 tight ends or people that hoard tight ends, I'm more than happy to roster OJ Howard. And he actually won me a few leagues this past week. So
Ooh.
I'm down with OJ Howard. He's got my grace he's got my grace for now. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the gems, right? We've done a little bit of research. We've tried to find some of these back end options, for deeper leagues where, hey, you might want to pick this guy up before it's too late. Last week we told you guys it was coined by Brit, the Bipocalypse, right? This was her term that I got from her. She might have sold it from somebody else. I don't know, but I got it from her, and I've been using it nonstop. The Bipocalypse. So I love it. I need to make sure that I give you more credit than what I have, but. We went back. We told you, hey, you need to pick these guys up last week because if you end up not having them on your rosters, you're going to regret it because you're going to be short. And guess what? Most people have regretted it because they didn't listen. They were like, what's the Bipocalypse? Oh, wait, 6 dominant teams are on bye this week. Yeah, that's the Bipocalypse. So let's go ahead and start this one out. And I'm going to go with Fitzpatrick. Now, Fitzpatrick isn't a guy that I want to pick up now, but I want to at least have him on my radar. We did this earlier, like week 2, I think, is when we started this out. We're like, hey, don't pick him up now, but just keep an eye on him as we progress because this could end up being a starter. I don't remember who it was, but we talked about it. Fitzpatrick is that guy. I expect him to be back by week 10. So I want to pick him up prior to week 9 where the Washington bye happens because most likely you're going to end up having, he's going to be out of sight, out of mind, right? He's not going to be on any waiver wire columns. He's going to be sitting there in the dark. And he's going to end up coming back in and taking over the starting job come week 10. He's somebody that I want to have with this offense. This offense has potential to be explosive. It's not right now, but has the potential to be with the right quarterback at the helm. Curtis Samuel's been hurt. Hopefully he comes back by the time Fitzpatrick comes back. Logan Thomas is hurt. He should be back, I believe, relatively soon. I think it was 5 weeks was the estimated time period. Mm-hmm. So that lines up almost exactly with when Fitzpatrick comes back. We have Antonio Gibson dealing with a major injury with his shins and his calves. Not a major, I should say mediocre. Major in the short term. It should be fixed relatively soon as long as he sees, some of the bench and he doesn't get worked too hard. But Fitzpatrick, this is a gold mine to have Fitzpatrick at this point with the schedule moving forward. Don't forget he has, 5 of the last 6 weeks of the season, he plays NFC East rivals. That's insane. Or actually, no, I think it's the last 5. I think it's the 5 of the last 5 games of the season. I've never seen that before. That's what it was. It was 5 games straight that he faces an NFC opponent. You're telling me that I'm sorry, did I say AFC? NFC East opponent. You're telling me that I get the NFC East 5 games in a row? Oh, give me Ryan Fitzpatrick all day. I will hold on to him up until that point because I want to make sure that I have these matchups for 5 weeks in a row. That's insane. Absolutely insane. Give them to me all day.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that's nuts. It's Dallas on the 12th, the Eagles on the 19th, Dallas again on the 26th, the Eagles on the 2nd, and the Giants on the 9th. So, what? I mean, you want to talk? Yeah, that's just bonkers.
I've never seen that before. I don't think I've seen that from any team ever having 5 divisional games in a row to finish out your season. Not just in a row, but to finish out your season. That's insane. So if you have Terry McLaurin in your sights, go trade for him now. If you have Antonio Gibson with him getting hurt, go trade for him now. These are all advantageous matchups all across the board. And Ryan Fitzpatrick should be the key to help unlocking this offense. We have to see if that actually happens, but it can't be bad going up against 5 NFC East rivals in a row.
And Fitzpatrick actually, he does pretty well when he throws to the downfield receivers, and McLaurin's just built for it. So I'm pretty excited to have him back and see what it does to McLaurin's fantasy value as well.
All right. So who do you have as your person? Oh, wait, or is this mine again?
That's yours again.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So Tannehill, this is tough because he has a bye week coming up, right? No, I'm sorry. This is I apologize. He has Kansas City coming up. And although he didn't do great up against the Bills, Kansas City might offer a little bit more of an opportunity to pass against the Bills have been steady up against quarterbacks partially the Kansas City Chiefs have been one giant Swiss cheese sandwich. So Tannehill is somebody that I'm actually trying to target, and people that are looking to fill in the space for the bye weeks are most likely going to drop Tannehill because he has not been good this year. A.J. Brown looked like himself in the second half. Got to see what happens with Julio Jones. Derrick Henry has shown that he can catch balls. We have Jerry McNichols that should be part of the fold. I mean, this is something where we have a loaded up arsenal ready to rock and roll for this, for this upcoming week. And I think that Tannehill is actually a buy that nobody's talking about because he could end up on waiver wires come Wednesday, or he should end up on free agency come Wednesday. Tannehill, are you in or are you out?
Yeah, I'm actually playing him this week in one of my big leagues. I'm a little concerned just because of the usage of Derrick Henry. I mean, he got all the touchdowns last night, but Tannehill wasn't bad as far as throwing and racking up yards. So if he can manage to find the end zone with A.J. Brown or Julio, I think his fantasy value would return and possibly win you your matchup. Yeah, he still threw for 216 yards, even with what Derrick Henry did last night. So not terrible. And I don't think they're going to have that luxury to throw or to run Henry down Kansas City's throat. I think they're going to have to throw to keep up with Patrick Mahomes and that offense.
I agree. All right, I'm really curious about this one. Your wide receiver pick for the next one's up. I need to hear this.
It's a deep cut. But I really like Matt Collins. Last week he went 4 of 61 and a touchdown on 5 targets. This is mainly just a pick because of the lack of other receivers on this Miami offense. You've got Will Fuller on IR. You have Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, who may or may not play. So there will definitely be a role there. I mean, he showed it this past week. He played 97% of the snaps with these two out. Probably just in really deep leagues. But if you blew all your FAAB and don't have anything left to go out and get somebody, I think that he would be a worthy pickup this week.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. It's more of a volume thing for me. And
yeah, 97% of the snaps are a lot.
Yeah. And of course, if like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams play, that changes things, but just keep your eye on him if you need a filler.
Okay. I'm biting. I can see that happening. And then I like your next one the most. I think this one was something that I missed on and I really wanted to talk about, but go ahead, take it.
Yeah. So Jarrett Patterson for the Washington football team. We've kind of talked almost ad nauseum about Gibson's shin and, are they going to put him on the bench? Or are they going to rest him? Which I was concerned going into last week. A fracture in your shin bone as a running back is no small injury. And if you continue to aggravate it, it can turn into something worse, like a full-on break even. I think they end up resting Gibson this week, and that carves out a role for Patterson. He's only 5'6", but he's 195 pounds. Like, this kid is...
He's shorter than I am.
Bull.
He weighs 40 pounds more.
Bull. Yeah. So he's like the Singletary type, and I think Mckissick is going to get a lot of that pass catching work that we talked about earlier. I think that they slide Patterson into that straight up, just run it down the middle role. And I think he has standalone fantasy value going forward if Gibson is out for a little while, which if they do rest him, it will probably be week 10 until he comes back. So that's a few weeks of pretty good production.
No, I agree with you. I think that Jarrett Patterson is somebody to, at least grab onto to see if they do sit him, because it's not going to be Mckissick in the middle. It's going to be Jarrett Patterson who's going to be taking those handoffs. I mean, we saw it in the preseason how electrifying, he was for this offense and how he got the people on their feet. But, I mean, obviously that's preseason. We don't want to rely on that for the pros, but at least you want somebody who's going to handle minimum first and second down work over there for Washington with a advantageous schedule coming up. So I like it. I'm on board with it. I can take it. I like Jarrett Patterson moving forward. Is he going to be a focal point of this offense? Absolutely not. But is he going to see enough touches to be fantasy relevant for a flex spot? Absolutely. I'm down with that 100%. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up for us. we have the Washington football show coming up next, where we're actually going to be on Twitter night. We're going to be doing an interactive Washington football team segment on Twitter. You guys can go check me out over there, FF_intervention. I'll be sharing the link, and we can actually go into the Twitter, whatever it's called, thingy, where people can interact as a group, and we can all talk and discuss ideas and stuff. Anyways, yeah, you guys can come join. Go check me out over there at FF_intervention on Twitter. Britt, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Britt_Flynn. You can find me every Sunday morning doing the Calm Before the Storm at 10 a.m. Central, 11 Eastern, with Kevin Tompkins and Gary Haddow. And you can find me over on fightingchancefantasy.com.
Hell yeah. Make sure you guys go check her out. Make sure you guys go check out our new team over there at TrophySmack.com. Once again, that's TrophySmack.com. If y'all need a trophy, right? Like, these things are legit. So I got this title belt, right? I'm carrying it to the airport. And everybody's asking if I'm like a fighter and shit, because this thing is like legit. It's heavy. Like, it's not light. This thing is made out of, like, I don't know if it's gold or what, but it's crazy. And anyways, it's legit. I'm just gonna leave it right here on my arm for a second. Yeah, go check out TrophySmack.com. Use promo code CIRCLE when you go to check out if you guys get a belt or a trophy, and you'll actually get a free championship fat ring with that if you guys go to check out and use that promo code CIRCLE. You guys can also go check us out over there at fantasyintervention.com. We do have the waiver wire article that came out by Mike over there, so go check that out today. One of the best waiver wire editions of the entire week is over there, and he doesn't give you a bunch of bullshit in between. And then, of course, you guys can all go follow Fantasy Football Discussion on Facebook. That's FFD, Fantasy Football Discussion. Go join the group. There's over 27,000 active members now. Most of y'all watching have come from there. So, yeah, big shout out to you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Britt, for joining. And thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.